Hi and hello, it's me, DJSoulbutter. I have returned, and I'm here to do another edition of The Curious Case of. And I want to say that I'm really glad and thankful for all the interaction that I've received from all of you, some of the comments and direct messages. And when I did my first Curious Case of, it was for, I believe, Weezer, and that got a pretty decent reaction. And the first band that was recommended to me to do another Curious Case of was Deftones. And since then, I've actually gotten a few other people also bring up the same band. So, you know what? I'm a man of the people. I aim to please. I'm having a good time. So let's do this. The Curious Case of Deftones. So at the beginning, we got Adrenaline. In 1995, they released this debut record, and this record sounded like youth. It sounded like angst. It sounded like nobody really understands me. This record definitely spoke to a part of youth that didn't feel like they were a part of any kind of establishment. This record was for kids who were definitely not cool and definitely were the person that at the pep rally, you know, when you'd go to a pep rally in high school and there was that one kid who was off to the side alone on the bleachers and they had headphones on, I always figured that they were listening to this record most likely. And I just remember the first time I heard Chino scream, it sounded like something I'd never heard before. It was just so, I don't know, insane. And this was just a really great, bold first statement from a band that obviously had potential. In 1997, we got the follow up, their second record, Around the Fur. And for me, this record, going back to it, I did always feel like this was kind of running in place. It was just more of the same that you got on Adrenaline. And of course, they have some of their most iconic songs like Be Quiet and Drive and My Own Summer. So this is obviously a good record. Just a spoiler alert, there's no bad Deftones record. It's all pretty solid across the board. But if I was to rank their records, this for me would definitely be in the back half, in my personal opinion, but still, all in all, a good record. And to put it lightly, this is when we got a titanic shift because in 2000 we got White Pony. And previously on my TikTok, I've actually already talked about this record and how much I love it. As I've said in the past, I feel like this is one of the most important metal records since the turn of the century. I stick by that. And this record was just an incredible watershed moment in metal music because this was something that came from nowhere that you were not expecting. A decision was made by Deftones to break away from the shackles of what new metal was. When you listen to this record and you got these incredible heavy soundscapes on songs like Digital Bath and Passenger, and then you got these enveloping songs like RX Queen, and then you get trip hop on a song like Teenager, it was just really shocking the first time you heard it. And this was something that was just so important, so consequential in many different ways. Just a really, really special record. And spoiler alert, I think this is their best album. So yeah, this was amazing. So for their fourth record in 2003, we got a self-titled record, Deftones. And I remember originally this record was supposed to be called Lovers. I actually wish they stuck with that. I like that. But on here, they continued to push the boundaries that they were pushing on their last record, White Pony. You got more elements of trip hop and also elements of shoegaze as well. And when you listen to a track like Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event, it's again really shocking and interesting. That's a really beautiful song. But at the same time, you still get the heavy elements, you know, on a song like Bloody Cape, for example. That song is crushing. And that's one of the great things about Deftones in general. They will continue to experiment, but they will never abandon fully what they're known for, what their core is as a band. It's just beautifully angry. And that's what this record is. So in 2006, we got their fifth record, Saturday Night Wrist. And also, this record is the final record that actually features contributions from their original bassist, Chi Chang, before his tragic, tragic accident that he had. That was really, really sad. And for me, this record definitely is a grower and not a shower, in my personal opinion. This is definitely, in my opinion, the weirdest Deftones record. And going back, when I first heard this album, I remember songs like Beware and Cherry Waves were songs that I kind of had a hard time kind of wrapping my arms around. But now in retrospect, going back to this album, I actually love those songs a lot. And this definitely fits in the catalog of Deftones as a pretty solid contribution. But at the same time, this definitely, man, this definitely wasn't for me at the time. But again, I did grow to love it. I do think it's a good album, but this also would be in the back half of their catalog, in my opinion. But still a good record. And for their sixth record, we got Diamond Eyes. And I remember when this record came out, I was kind of like, wow, where did this come from? Because I got so used to the experimental side of Deftones that this record was pretty much, I guess you would classify as a return to form, because this record was loud, it was angry, it was crushing and aggressive. And I always felt like this record would be like the kids who made Adrenaline and they just broke up right after that. And then 15 years later, they got back together. They're a little bit older, and they were like, all right, let's make a second album. And I feel like the result of that would be this record, because it basically sounded like mature anger, like a mature version of Adrenaline. And in my opinion, I feel like this record is maybe a top 3 Deftones record. I really do love this album. So after what felt like a pretty quick turnaround, we got 2012's Koi no Yokan. And in my opinion, I feel like this is the most underrated Deftones album in their whole catalog. And I also feel like this is Chino's most impressive vocal performance as well. And, listening to a song like Entombed, for example, is just so sweeping and anthemic. It's really a sight to behold listening to that track. And I just feel like this record kind of gets lost in the shuffle when it comes to the scene and when it comes to Deftones in general. And I definitely feel like more people should give their props to this album, because this was really good as well. And if you haven't listened to this one in a while, go back to it. This was really, really good. So after a little bit of a break, 4 years later, we got Gore. And like I said in the beginning earlier in this video, there's no such thing as a bad Deftones record. But for me, this record is definitely the weakest of the bunch. Like, if I was to listen to Deftones, this would definitely be the last record that I would choose to put on. And going back on this, I can't really put my finger on why, but it just feels like something was missing. I don't really know what, but when you look at their whole catalog as a whole, this would be the closest thing I guess you can categorize as somewhat of a misstep. But that's saying a lot, because this record is still good, but yeah, this was just not it in comparison. So for their 9th record, we got Ohms. And after the release of Gore, I did have some concerns that maybe we were going to start to see a steady decline in quality record by record, but those fears were definitely quickly squashed with the release of this album, because in a strange way, this record is almost one of their darkest albums. Like, this sounded very haunting and almost apocalyptic. Like, listening to this record, you felt like you were getting swallowed whole by it or something. And this just further solidified that they are one of the best heavy bands of the last 30 years. And I just very much look forward to hearing what they got for their 10th record. And that's all I got. As always, thank you so much for watching. Peace, love, butter.